Hello and welcome back to Inside the Iggles Live. My name's Jake. We're workshopping names. We might call it the Nest Inside the Iggles Live. We're workshopping names. Let us know what you guys think. If you have any good ideas too, it's always good to crowdsource things so we have to do less work. I love that. Thank you guys very much for joining us on this Friday, September 22nd is the day. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us. We're going to start things off on Wednesday. Jeff and I interviewed Josh Hill from the Pewter Plank, which is the fan-sided Tampa Bay Buccaneers website. We talked to him, thought it might be a good idea to get somebody else's voice in here, so you don't have to listen to us and listen to me make dumb jokes about pounding off all the time. But let's pull that interview up. It'll be probably about 20 minutes, I think, is what it was, and then we'll join you right after that's done.
Behind enemy lines to hang out with a good friend of mine, one of the great content writers I think I've ever been a part of, hugely responsible for the success I've had, a dear friend. Unfortunately, he just allied with the wrong team. Welcome to the broadcast, my guy, Josh Hill. What's going on, man?
Yeah, not a whole lot. Glad to be here. Ready for a little Bucs-Eagles action. It's always fun when these two teams meet up, I have to say. We were joking about the 2002 championship game, but there was like a good time in like that early 2000s. There was like a decent rivalry going on there. It wasn't really a rivalry because the Eagles would just beat the tar out of the Bucs. Like, I was a kid at the time, and one of my first memories of childhood heartbreak is watching those Donovan McNabb, Andy Reid teams in the wild card. The Bucs and Tony Dungy go up to the vet, and it's just cold and it's just not good. And I'm like, this is what pain is like. I grew as a man watching the Bucs get humbled by the Eagles in the early 2000s.
You know what, man? I've never really said this to anybody publicly because I try to act like this isn't the case, but that championship game, and I know we were joking about it. I said I wasn't going to talk about it for obvious reasons and things of that nature.
Here we are.
The final game at the vet, man. A few weeks before that, my last trip to the vet was actually to see them beat Tampa Bay. After the Donovan McNabb leg injury and things of that nature, and to watch him come back, I remember seeing him struggle against Atlanta and everything. We pulled that game out, but you guys were just on fire, and you kind of ran through San Francisco, and I was like, that hot at the right time component looked like it was going y'all's way, and we were struggling. I was like, man, I didn't want to tell anybody this, man, but I went into that game feeling like this could go bad here. I don't care anything about weather and all that other stuff. This could go really bad, and it can go bad quickly.
Yeah, it was the Super Bowl was obviously like the peak, like beating the Raiders. And I think the Eagles would have beaten the Raiders. It was a matter of who was going to win that NFC championship game to go to the Super Bowl. But the Rondé Barber pick six, it remains like a number two. I would say the number two, if not the greatest fan moment that I've had, bigger than the Super Bowl against the Raiders, bigger than the Super Bowl against the Chiefs, just because it was that catharsis. Because it wasn't just the Eagles. It was all of those. It was the 99 championship game against the Rams that they should have won if Sean King in the offense and Bertie Manuel wanted to score more than 6 points, which
that was a catch.
Couldn't have. It was a catch. Thank you. Thank you. Look at that. We can come together on this. It was a catch. Thank you.
The rule says it's not a catch, but I'm like, sometimes you got to use common sense, man. Like, forget what the rule says. Look at it. The guy had the ball. He had control of the ball. He had touched the ground, and now they've changed it since then. But that's a catch as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it was a catch then. It's a catch now. But it was the catharsis of that pick six that was really, really what made that moment so awesome. And it sort of lifted all of the stress off too, because then when the Eagles are going to the Super Bowl to play the Patriots in a couple of years after that, I'm like, sure, let's go. I almost was like, I want them to get theirs. That'd be great, but we'll see. You guys got it against the Patriots eventually, so It all worked out.
Third time was a charm for us, man. And I guess
matter of time.
It's funny that you say that, man. Your great memory is actually one of the worst I've ever had. So I remember the kick return from Brian Mitchell. I remember us going up 7 early real quickly with that Deuce Staley touchdown. I'm like, you know what? We might pull this out. And then everything went haywire after that. But I guess we can talk about the current squads and everything while we're on the subject. So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Todd Bowles, former Eagles coordinator, former Eagles assistant. We love him around these parts still. There's a bit of confusion about how well of a job he does and how much he deserves the job as head coach and things of that nature. We know how we feel about Todd Bowles. How do you feel, and how do Tampa Bay Buccaneers describe Todd Bowles when you talk about him?
I was really excited when Bowles got the head coaching job, when Arians stepped down last year, because it felt like he was putting Bowles in the best position to succeed. He's getting a year of Tom Brady. He's the architect of that Super Bowl defense. Like that 2020 year, Brady, all of that stuff, like it was great. The offense was awesome. The reason they won that Super Bowl was because Todd Bowles coached that defense unlike we've seen him coach a defense before. Like I know he had good defenses in Philadelphia and in New York and in Arizona, but at that point in Patrick Mahomes' career, to keep him out of the end zone for the first time in his career and to absolutely pants them in the Super Bowl on the highest, biggest stage in the sport was, I think, the crowning achievement of his career. It's just like that guy has been all over the place. He's been knocked down a couple of times. He finally got a shot again, and he was the architect of that defense. Then to see him be the head coach, to be like, oh man, he's going to do it again. This is awesome. He's finally going to get his shot. That's what made last season so frustrating, because it was like, this was it. This was supposed to be it. He was supposed to go on a run. It was supposed to sort of be a coronation for him, and it didn't end up being that. So to see him this year now, he's had an off season where he can really fully settle in, because he was installed, I don't know, what it was like late February, early March 2022. So he didn't even really have time to settle in. He's had a full off season. More importantly, I think he got to pick his offensive coordinator. He was friendly with Byron Leftwich. They both came up with Todd Bowles, or with Bruce Arians, but Todd Bowles being able to pick Dave Canales. That's him going, I want my guy. I'm going to do it my way. This isn't Bruce Arians' team anymore, which is kind of what the 2022 team felt like. It was Bruce Arians' team that Todd Bowles got to coach. Now this is Todd Bowles' Buccaneers team. And you look at it through the first 2 weeks of the year, 17 points allowed in back-to-back games on defense. The offense looks completely different from what it was last year. Baker's cooking, or should I say he's baking. The bakery's open. Come and get the biscuits in Tampa. But the defense and the offense, it looks like a different team. And I think that that's Todd Bowles all off season, embracing that underdog narrative of the Bucs are going to be garbage. Tom Brady retired. They're tanking for Caleb Williams, and the season hasn't even started. And Todd Bowles himself, you go through any list of, coaching hot seats, he's at the top of every single list in the offseason. And where is he now? 2-0. They might be 3-0 after Monday. We'll see. But even if they play the Eagles really close and they play a really good game against the Eagles, I think that that's going to be another sign that this is Todd Bowles' team. He has finally put his stamp on this team. And this is what it looks like when you've given him control and given him the ability to say, this is what I want it to look like. These are my guys. This is what my Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to look like. And right now it looks like a 2-0 team that might be bound for the playoffs.
Yeah, I guess my question, you might have touched on it there a little bit with it. Is his last name Canales?
Yep.
Okay. I guess what the hell is going on with Baker? All right. Because a month ago, we were all laughing. Everybody was laughing at the Buccaneers quarterback situation, where there's a quarterback battle between Kyle Trask and Baker Mayfield. Mm-hmm. And then, like you said, now they're 2-0, and Baker's he's looking good, which was nothing anybody expected. So what the hell, what happened?
It's a good question. I'm liking what's happening there. I would say one of the things, as everybody was making the same joke over the offseason of, look at the optics of going from Brady to Baker. This is going to be terrible, and buy your Caleb Williams or Drake May jerseys now, because that's what it's going to be in 2024. Nobody in that building entered the offseason or approached any of the moves that they made with the idea that this team is going to tank. And I think signing Baker Mayfield might have been low-key one of the smartest things that they did, because he has a chip on his shoulder the same way that everybody in that locker room does. He's a guy who it's like, well, you were the first overall pick, but whatever, you burned out in Cleveland, and then you burned out in Carolina, and you spent a couple of, 15 good minutes with Sean McVay and the Rams.
Right.
Well, you have nothing to show for your career. His highlight at that point was, planting the flag when he was at OU, grabbing his junk on the sideline at OU, and then winning a playoff game for the Browns. Right. That's not a very good list. So to see him come to Tampa, he has that underdog chip on his shoulder sort of attitude. And what's working is he's mitigating those mistakes. He's finally settling in, reading these defenses, and he's able to basically be a game manager and help the offense stay out of its own way, which is a big problem last season.
Yep.
But I think another thing lost in the sauce of all the offseason trolling was he's healthy. And he also has two of the best weapons he's ever had in his entire career in Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. So to have those two guys, and you've already seen first 2 weeks of the season, he's hit Mike Evans for 2 touchdowns. When he needs to get the offense going, he goes to Chris Godwin or he goes to Mike Evans. And then that run game behind him is something else that he's always sort of struggled with. He's never had that consistent run game. It's still growing. Rashad White, Sean Tucker, they're still getting it together. But I think what's really working for Baker is he's healthy. He has those weapons, and it's that fire in his belly. This is his last chance. If this doesn't work in Tampa, he's a backup at best the rest of his career. He knows what's on the line here. And when he came to the Bucs, I guess it was a situation where they view him as the long-term option. So they want this to work. Jason Light and the Bucs want this to work with Mayfield as much as Mayfield wants it to work. Because then you don't need to draft the quarterback. Then you don't need to spend resources finding another guy. You have the guy. You're building around the number 1 overall pick. So the Bucs essentially drafted Baker Mayfield number 1 overall, if you're looking at it that way, and he's their quarterback. And that's what they want to work. And I think that chip on his shoulder is really, really helping him. And you can see the Bucs feeding off that over the first 2 weeks of the season. They're just a different looking team than they were last year.
And you mentioned Mike Evans there. Is there a real fear that he's going to like get traded mid-season?
I don't think
everything
so.
going on with him.
I don't think so. I could see that a little bit more before the season, when the narrative was still like, oh, they're not going to be very good. I think even if they're not good, they're not going to trade him, because if they were going to make a move with him, whether it was giving him an extension or trading him away, it would have already happened. They needed to shed $55 million in salary cap this offseason. They have over $35 million in dead cap space. If they were going to try to do something to leverage Mike Evans into future assets, whether that was cap relief or future draft picks or both, it would have happened already. And now they're good, or at least they look like they're going to be good. And we're moving further and further away from the Mike Evans is going to get traded conversation and more towards are the Bucs going to be in a position to give him as much money as he wants in the offseason? Because it looks like he's playing his way into that $85 million contract that he wants. They weren't going to give it to him before the season. They had the whole like little standoff thing, but it seems like there's no bad blood between him and the front office. He's going to go do his thing. He's going to play really well this season. And in a perfect world, the Bucs reward him. They pay him at the end of the season. They give him that 3-year contract. They re-signed Baker. You've got that all together, and now you've got something moving forward. But I don't think that he's going to get traded in the middle of the season. They'd be foolish if they traded him in the middle of the season.
That was one of the fears, especially after that Chiefs first game where nobody could catch a ball. Is like, Eagles are playing Chiefs later on in the year. Are we going to end up having to see Mike Evans twice or something like that? It was like, hey, I don't want that.
No. It's funny, as you were mentioning some of the Baker highlights, I remember those commercials when he was living in the Cleveland Browns Stadium. So he probably should have been throwing a few more routes and things of that nature while it was going on, though. But I wanted to ask you about collegiate cancer. Like earlier in the offseason, when we started talking about, this top 10 draft pick that he was going to have, we had no idea that Jalen Carter was going to fall to us at 9. We didn't think that. That seemed like an impossibility at the time, because I personally thought he should have been the first overall draft pick. Mm-hmm. And obviously, had he not gotten himself in trouble, he would have been. Collegiate Cansey was actually mocked to us in several drafts and things of that nature. And I actually didn't know who he was because I don't watch a lot of ACC football. But I remember the comps then being Aaron Donald and things like that, being the super athletic, undersized defensive tackle and things of that nature. But now he's hurt. So what's the buzz around him and things of that nature? Do you think there's any chance of him playing? And if you could kind of go over some of your other injuries as well.
Yeah, so with Cansey, the calf is the problem. So, and he played a little bit in week 1 against the Vikings. And in the very small sample size that we had with him, he looked great. Like he was getting pressure on Kirk Cousins. He was getting through that offensive line of Minnesota. And he was looking like everything that the Bucs needed out of a guy who they need coming off the edge. They've always lacked that sort of edge rusher. I think you got to go back to well, that's why you getting Jason Pierre-Paul for that Super Bowl run, that was so important. But I mean, you got to go back to Michael Bennett. You got to go way back to get to the guys that are actually good on that defensive line or the defensive end for the Bucs. And that's what Cansey is supposed to be. And he's in such a good position to succeed because he's next to Vita Vea, who's just an absolute wrecking ball up the middle. And if you've got defenses or offenses worrying about Vita Vea coming up the middle, being a run stuffer, and you have Cansey coming off the end, pass rushing. And then behind him, you've got Shaq Barrett, you've got Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, you've got some of these other guys. You all of a sudden, Todd Bowles' soup that he's making on defense is looking really spicy. The problem with Cansey, like you said, is he's hurt. and I don't know if he's going to play on Monday. And that we don't know when he's going to play again. And that's not like he's going to be out for the season. It's that calf is just a problem. And we saw with Aaron Rodgers, you don't want to rush that calf back because the calf's going to turn into an Achilles. Mm-hmm. And then you've completely wiped out his rookie season. But they were able to get by without Kancey on Sunday against the Bears, which, I mean, let's be real, that's not that hard of a thing based on the state of the Bears. Right. But one of the other injuries that they had was Carlton Davis on Sunday. And that was the one that made me the most nervous. And it seems like he's got a turf toe issue that he's dealing with. It's unclear how he's going to do, and we're going to have to see how he does the rest of the week in practice. But if Carlton Davis can't play, the Bucs secondary is already super thin. So they had to play Zion McCollum. They had to move him over from the nickel corner spot. They only have like 5 guys at that cornerback spot. And it's Carlton Davis and Jamel Dean are the top 2 guys. So if you take one of them out, you've got to play a game like you played against the Bears, where it's not a good team, and you try not to make many mistakes. And they still got burned. They got burned by DJ Moore. They got burned on a Chase Claypool touchdown. So that secondary, it's a little iffy just to begin with because it's so thin. But then you start accounting for some of the injuries, like with Carlton Davis. Now you're dealing with, what is Jalen Hurts going to do against this depleted secondary? What is Devonta Smith? AJ Brown. I'm getting cold sweats thinking about them go. AJ Brown or Devonta Smith going up against Zion McCollum or like Josh Hayes, the rookie. It's like, that's not the situation that you want to be in. And even if Davis and Dean are healthy and they're playing, that's still a tough matchup for the Bucs secondary. So when you account for the injuries, and then you got Kancey, it's questionable whether or not he's going to play. All of a sudden, it's like we're worried about what that offense of the Eagles is going to do, because we've seen what it can do when everything's clicking. And if they smell blood in the water and there's some injuries that the Bucs are dealing with, it could get nasty real quick with what that offense can do.
Now you mentioned that Bears game, and from the outside looking in, you see the Bucs just beat up on the Bears. You're like, man, you can't really take that much away from it. I mean, obviously you did. What other kind of takeaways can you get from a game like that? It seems reductive almost, but good teams beat bad teams. And that's not what we saw out of the Bucs last year. And they were supposedly a good team. I mean, when you have Tom Brady as your quarterback and you have some of the weapons that they had, they should not have struggled as much as they did. And they struggled against, bad teams, or they got themselves into situations where it's like, oh man, they're going to blow this, or they've got to come back. And what was really encouraging, I think, about the Bears game and the Vikings game too, last year, the Bucs would get into situations where Tom Brady needed to bring them back. You think about the Rams game where he brought them back, or even failed comebacks like the one against the Bengals. They didn't learn anything from that. It just felt like, sigh of relief. Now we're going to go on. We're going to pretend like none of this happened. Band-Aid on a bullet hole type of thing, where it's like it's not fixing anything. Where this year, they play a tough game against the Vikings week 1. They're not in a situation to come back. They're in a situation to close out. And instead of kind of having that same sigh of relief, like, we got past that one, on to the next one, it's a confidence builder. They're like, we can do this. We can be in games like this. We can go on the road as underdogs, and we can win against a team that's supposed to be good. And I think the Vikings will end up being good, but it's a confidence builder. And the same thing against the Bears. You have a bad team come in last year, you struggle against them. You have a bad team come in this year, there's some struggles. Not every that first drive for the Bears, they kind of Swiss cheese to the Bucs defense. He hit a big pass to DJ Moore. Justin Fields runs it in. And at that point, I'm thinking, oh, God, here we go again, because we went through that so many times last year. Right. But to see them, even after that, like they get a blocked field goal that the Bears almost returned for a touchdown. And it's like, when it rains, it pours. The way that they adjusted, and they've done this 2 straight weeks, after those mistakes, and they didn't let them get them down, that is the big takeaway for me. That is a team that has matured. That is a team that has been through some stuff. And they're not going to let those things hold them back the way that they did last year. And kind of to the first point, like what we were talking about with Todd Bowles, I think that starts at the top. Yep. There was a lot of mistakes that were made last year. There were some questions about how well the team was coached. Donovan Smith, the offensive lineman, would not stop holding. I think he's still holding somebody somewhere. A lot of that was, why isn't Todd Bowles coaching this out of them? Why isn't this, why isn't he fixing this? To see them have those adjustments this year, to go into halftime at week 1 against the Vikings, having to come back and tie the game, and then come out in the second half with all of those adjustments, to see the Bears start the way that they did and not get startled
and take control of the game again to the point where it ends on a nasty pick six by Shaq Barrett, that is a different team. That is a team that has learned, and that is a team that is very, very well coached. And I think it's kudos to Todd Bowles for what he's done from last year to this year.
You guys have talent all over the place. I know who Mike Evans is. I know Chris Godwin. I know Rachaad White. I know Baker Mayfield. Of course, we know who Vita Veda and your Shaq Barretts and guys are. But it's always those guys that you don't know that end up costing you. Who are the guys that Eagles fans may not be familiar with who we should probably watch in this game that could end up being a potential wild card and help you guys cause the upset victory?
The Christian Eisen, the safety. Well, he's a nickel corner. Undrafted rookie, comes into camp, really proves himself, earns a starting job before the 53-man roster is even being talked about. I think it was that the Sunday after their last preseason game against the Ravens, Todd Bowles was already like, this guy's the starting nickel corner. He's the guy. He's in the safety room. I want him with Antoine Winfield Jr. and Ryan Neal. Week one, Izien has a really clutch interception on the goal line. He snatches the ball out of KJ Osborne's hands, takes 7 points off the board for the Vikings in a game that the Bucs end up winning 20-17. Huge, huge, huge play. He also had a couple of big plays in that game. Last week against the Bears, he has the game-sealing interception. After the pick six, Bears are like, maybe we can mount a comeback. Izien's like, no way. Getting the interception, we're ending it here. That is a guy, if we're talking about the depleted secondary and worrying about things that Jalen Hurts might do if he can smell blood in the water, Izien's a guy he's got that chip on his shoulder. He's an undrafted rookie. He earned his spot on the team, and he's already starting to make a name for himself over the first 2 weeks of the season. And he's something that Bucs fans are really excited to watch moving forward, because it seems like he might be one of those diamonds in the rough, one of those sleepers that Jason Light was able to identify, and then Todd Bowles is able to develop. So I'd definitely keep an eye on him. And speaking of the run game, another undrafted rookie, Sean Tucker out of Syracuse. He's a guy who probably should have been drafted. He had a heart condition, dropped his stock a little bit. Bucs end up picking him up as an undrafted rookie. He worked his way into the running back 2 spot. He's the backup, or even the 1B to Rachaad White's 1A in the running game. And sort of the pie in the sky dream with him, because Skip Pete's the running back coach. He came over from Dallas, where he took Zeke Elliott and Tony Pollard, and you guys know better than anybody what he did with those guys. That's what we want with Rachaad White and Sean Tucker. And Skip Pete already did that with 2 guys in Dallas. Now Canales has him trying to do that in Tampa. And Tucker, he's been a little slow for the first couple of weeks of the season, but he was a stud in the preseason. He was one of those fast rising guys, one of those training camp favorites that everybody likes to follow. And to see him earn that RB2 role and to start slowly working himself into the offense here, I think as the Bucs start working out the run game, you're going to start hearing his name a lot more alongside Rachaad White. So those are 2 guys. And again, it's a testament to the Bucs that 2 of those guys are undrafted rookies, and it's not a bad thing. They found these guys. Jason Light knows how to identify talent, and Christian Eisen and Sean Tucker, 2 guys, keep an eye on them. They could be big time playmakers.
Cool. I know we kept you a little longer than we said we would, man. We appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to come out and hang with us. You got a prediction for the game?
My heart says the Bucs win. My head says the Eagles win, but it's going to be a very, very I think the takeaway from this is going to be the Bucs on national television. Can they keep this going, and can they do it against a good team? The Vikings, they're the Vikings. Kirk Cousins. The Bears are a tire fire. So it's like basically a preseason game that they played. I want to see the Bucs play tough, and I want to see them play the Eagles close. I don't need them to win. They'll be 2-1. I'll be able to sleep at night. What'll keep me up at night is if we see a team that looked like the team last year and the Eagles just absolutely pick them apart, and it's like a 40-6 game or something like that. That's the last thing I want to see. But my heart says Bucs. My head says Eagles in a close one.
We appreciate you allowing us to come behind enemy lines with you, man. Former editorial director for Fansided.com, content director for the Fansided Network, editor at the Pewter Plank, good friend of mine. Josh, we appreciate it, man. I know you're busy and everything. I'm gonna send you a starter jacket with like a little Kelly Green tinge to it and everything. That thing is ugly.
Oh man, this is beauty. This is a thing of beauty right there. The creamsicle. I'll leave it with this one. Let's write a letter to the league and let's maybe get this changed in the days leading up to the game. Let's get the Bucks creamsicles against the Eagles and the Kelly Green on Monday night. All-time uniform matchup. We're all winners in that one.
Follow him. Where am I pointing? Follow him down there. That's his Twitter handle or X handle or whatever they call themselves these days. Josh, honor and privilege, man. We thank you for hanging out with us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
Have a good one. All right, we're back, bringing in Brandon Pockris and Jeffrey Knox. How you guys doing?
It's been a long time since we saw some football, man. I'm excited. That felt like my week. You know, I know it's not, but that's kind of what it felt like.
Yeah, I'm doing good as well. Can't wait.
This weird. I don't like starting the season off like this. I didn't think it was gonna be feel this weird, but it's gonna be nice to get into a groove, which we're not gonna get into because it goes Monday night and then Sunday the week. It's very frustrating. It's a very frustrating thing. It's been what is it at this point? 8 days.
It'll be 11 by the time they kick off, somewhere around that time. But it's been a long time. I know the players don't like it. Well, Jason Kelsey does. Jason Kelsey likes that extra rest, and I think some of the veterans do too. But I've never had to do it. Like I said a million times in my football career ended after high school, so I've never had to play 2 NFL games in 5 days without measuring stuff. But it'll be good to see him back on the field. It does seem strange though. We'll have 2 NFL Sundays without an Eagles game before we see another Eagles game.
Talking about quick turnover, did you guys ever watch that BS High documentary? What was it? The Bishop Sycamore thing?
Yeah, I finally got around to that. Man, that's a whole episode in and of itself, because the long and short of it is that coach needs to be in prison.
Absolutely.
I don't care if the law says, the quote unquote evidence is that guy should be in jail.
Yep.
I mean, how do you just avoid paying everything? Literally, how do you avoid paying everything?
He's a professional con man
and still manage to be free. I don't know.
Well, but my point there was I totally forgot because they did that game against what's the school, the famous one?
IMG.
IMG. They did the IMG Academy 2 days after they played another game. They played a game on Friday, and then they played IMG Academy on Sunday. So that was a quick turnaround thing.
Yeah. To the point Jeff made with his playing days of football ending after high school. The same goes for me. I also vividly remember that after a game day, you're so sore and tired, and the fact that they played an entire game and then played another one 2 days later, when I saw that, I was like, this is just
mind-boggling,
insanity.
It has to be. So I guess I would go the other way. I guess I would rather them get that done early in the season than have to do it somewhere around week 8 or 9. I mean, I guess that's the bright side of this and everything. As fans, we kind of have to wait a little bit and things of that nature. But I guess the NFL is happy because they just want to get checks. They're getting a check now from Amazon. They're getting the checks from YouTube, and they got the Black Friday game that you have to watch now.
And I do want to get into that. How
this guys play on Tuesday and Wednesday after a while.
I kind of want to get into that, talking about how the Eagles got a pretty long break here in the middle of a gauntlet of defensive coordinators. But Brandon, that was your first time listening to that interview. Did Josh say anything that kind of stuck out to you?
I mean, I think that that undrafted kid in the secondary, that's definitely something where, especially you look at the injury reports. Tampa has Carlton Davis dealing with an injury. He's still limited in practice. And then you have already banged up secondary. That's very important. And then Sean Tucker. I mean, I was aware of Tucker. I also was surprised he didn't get drafted. But it all goes to the point where, I think looking at the game, and this might be jumping the gun a little bit, but it all comes down to, I think, for me at least, how the Eagles offense matches up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense. Because when it comes to both coordinators, Desai and Johnson, I have a lot of confidence in Desai and the Eagles defense, because they've played at a high level, and I think even with their struggles, it'll be a lot easier for them to find their footing because of just the talent they have. A lot of the times with offense, it's more play calling based and more, scheme based, and facing a Todd Bowles led defense that can throw a lot of different looks. I just think that how that matchup goes is going to play a huge role into whether, the Eagles win by a lot, the Eagles win by a little, or if the Eagles even win the game at all.
I'm with you, man. I think I don't really have anything else to add to that. You enunciated that perfectly. And I guess the only thing I would add is, I guess with talent on both sides of the ball, sounds cliche, but it comes down to coaching. Like, say what you want to say about Todd Bowles. I think he doesn't get a lot of respect because he's quiet, but the guy's forgotten more about football than I think Brian Johnson has learned yet. And that's no disrespect to Brian Johnson, but if he comes in with a game plan similar to what we've seen the first 2 weeks and everything, I'm very worried about what's going to happen as far as Bowles. And he's going to send the house, as Brandon spoke last week. But I'm a little worried about that aspect of it. I think from a talent standpoint, as far as matchups, I think we got a lot of advantages in a lot of different spots. And to your point, Brandon, if Carlton Davis isn't ready to go, I think he's still day-to-day with a toe injury.
He's so as of today, he was a limited practice on both Thursday and Friday.
Okay. So there's a possibility if that's going on, he still might play then. And then you got that extra day of rest. But I like A.J. Brown, and I like Devontae Smith against that secondary. And I like I'm a little worried about the second level. They just stacked at linebacker, something we'll never be. But they just got guys at linebacker, and even that new guy, Joe Tryon Shoyinka, I think his name is.
You crushed that.
I did. I think he's going to be good. But if you got Tryon Shoyinka coming off the edge, and then you got Shaq Barrett on the other side, and you got Levante David and Devin White in the middle of the formation, it's like, can you get the ball to Dallas Goedert at the second level? Can you?
Right.
I trust Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson on the edges and stuff, but that's a tough to ask, all game long. And then you got Vita Vea crash in the middle of the line and things of that nature. Like, he isn't just a space eater. He's somebody that he can run over people and make plays.
Do you guys remember how Jason Kelsey did against him in that playoff game in 2021?
I think he held his own. I think it was like a pretty back and forth, but I think he held his own pretty well.
Okay.
My biggest question, I think, when it comes to the Eagles offense is, looking at Tampa's strength and Tampa's weaknesses, and also the Eagles' strengths and weaknesses, which I feel like is more important for this show. How would you attack the Tampa Bay defense in terms of an offensive game plan approach?
You can't seem to run stretch plays. That's out. Blast possibly work if you can wear Vita down over time and stuff. Maybe you use the pass, the opposite of what we normally see, use the pass to set up the run.
Because it's funny, because
I'll get a lead, and then maybe you can run the ball later to try to wear things down. But that's a tough ask against Vita Vea is cool. And, we talk so much about him, we forget about Logan Hall. And, thank goodness Khalid Kancey isn't playing in this game, and he's not the guy that we heard he was. But
right,
this is a tough ask here. And then William Golson is like a reserve along that line.
It's it's tough because we talk, and I talked last episode, you want the run to be this foundation of the Eagles offense, and yet you're facing up against this team where they've shut down the running game in both games they played. And yes, they didn't exactly play the best of opponents. They played Minnesota and they played Chicago. Well, Minnesota had a very good rushing attack last year, and Chicago has the likes of Justin Fields and Khalil Herbert and Roschon Johnson, the two main running backs. They're not bad backs. So Tampa has been a very, very good team against the run. So now that's putting you back in the situation where, we don't want the Eagles offense as pass happy as they've been, but are they now going to have to stick with that game plan at the detriment of potentially not having the run game be as effective as they want it?
I still think that the run game will be effective. I mean, it's just the giant glaring elephant in the middle of the field there. I mean, the run game coordinator is still Jeff Stoutland. I mean,
Right.
It's
Yes.
not like Brian Johnson is coming up with run plays on his own. If that was the case, things might be a little bit more hairy. But I mean, I think Jeff Stoutland has enough that he certainly has the tools to be able to kind of impose his will with the running game. But I think that the Eagles' run game will be able to be a little bit more effective. I mean, it's seeing how good the run game was last week, and the run game in Week 1. It's Bill Belichick with time to prepare for it. So that's why the run game wasn't really working there. Like, Eagles were trying to stretch it out, and it just wasn't working. Mm-hmm. I think with this, I mean, granted, yeah, Todd Bowles is getting a little bit more time to prepare for it and everything, but I'm not entirely sure it's just be like, well, that's not going to work. I think it's one of those things where I would. I mean, it comes down to just the simple idea: you run the ball, set a play action, be able to throw the ball on the sides, and I think that if they can get that working, hopefully they use these 11 days well and kind of corrected some of the things that we were seeing. Hopefully they can make it work. It's just that's what I was saying, man. It's just a gauntlet of defenses that you're going up against at the beginning of the season. Like what Josh mentioned in that interview, the Bucks beating the Bears was just like, okay, like a confidence thing. Like, all right, vibes are good now. We know that we can beat up on these bad teams. They got good vibes right now. There's no way they have bad vibes. Like the Vikings last week had bad vibes going into it. But the Eagles, it really seemed, you would really hope that this is the game where they have the time and they need to right the ship and get that offense firing on all cylinders. But man, this is just the defense that I'm not entirely sure that's the outcome that's going to happen here.
This may be I guess to answer your question, Brad, this may be the spam AJ Brown game. Like, you got an injured Carlton Davis. You may want to take advantage of that if he's deciding he wants to play. Jamel Dean is out there, but I still like my chances with AJ and Devontae against those guys. Yeah. I would probably say if Quez is injured, maybe we finally see some OZ, some Olamide Zaccheaus and things of that nature. But he mentioned that Christian, I'm going to butcher this, Izzy, the undrafted rookie. Had no idea who he was and everything. Now he leads the Bucks in picks. So that seems like it could be an interesting battle in the slot, but I don't know how effective Dallas Goedert is going to be in this game when you got linebackers who can blitz, tackle, and cover.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think this game plan for the Eagles, it has to run through Brown and Devonta. It has to run through them, especially, look, obviously Jamel Dean and Carlton Davis, great corners, but if they're dealing with injury, and your receiver room is relatively healthy, you got to put the trust in the Jalen Hurts to be like, hey, go attack this secondary and don't take the ball out of his hands when it looks like that offense is rolling the way it's supposed to. And I think that's going to be the biggest thing. Whatever they commit to and whatever's working, they just got to stick with it. They can't have, if AJ Brown dominates a drive and, there's an adjustment, find a different way to get the ball in his hands. Don't run, pass, or run. And like, it's just about staying consistent and, ensuring that you're making those adjustments in game so that your offense is able to, stay ahead of the sticks and, take advantage of the weaknesses that, even though they're a good unit, that the Buccaneers still have on defense.
Yeah, and as far as being able to adjust, I mean, maybe his initial Brian Johnson and Nick Sirianni's initial script for those first 15 plays wasn't perfect, but he did adjust, and he adjusted, and it was incredibly effective. So, I mean, I agree there. I think that adjustment's going to kind of be critical.
How long do we get to before? What happens if there's an issue with getting the ball to these guys? I don't think you should have that many issues getting the ball to A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. This might be the game where you have to stick with the run if you don't see the run work early. Like, you got to just, like boxing, take some body shots and everything. The chin eventually will open itself up. But my fear is Jalen Hurts puts himself in a position to where it's like, I feel like this is only a matter of time before he's just like gets really frustrated with this passing game and he just starts taking off. but all these hits he's taking, especially this early in the season, man, like he's getting sacked a lot. He's holding on to the ball too long. I think the one area where he may have regrets is I don't think he trusts what he's seeing right now. And with a quarterback who can bail himself out with his legs, that tends to turn into tuck the ball, take off. Let's see what we can happen. But I'm not excited about the possibility of seeing him take some unnecessary shots, but could be where it's headed.
I mean, the defense that could exasperate that problem and make it appear a lot worse than it might be is, unfortunately, this Todd Bowles defense.
Right.
He is – look, as someone that's seen a lot of Todd Bowles in the past, Todd Bowles' issues have never really been on the defensive side. When he was a head coach, it was the offensive side because he had more responsibility, probably should have, and it's been clock management. Defense, he's consistently – since I've been following football, been one of the best defensive play callers in the NFL. He is going to have a game plan ready. And, we keep circling back to it. It's up to Jalen Hurts and Brian Johnson and the rest of the offense to have that counter punch ready, to have that game plan ready to counteract what Bowles is going to try and take away from that Eagles offense. And a big part of that is Jalen Hurts playing smart. Because, look, if Hurts doesn't play smart, he is going to take some shots that he probably doesn't need to. Or if he holds onto the ball too long, those great edges that the Buccaneers have, they're going to take advantage of that. At the end of the day, with some of this stuff, especially on offense, it doesn't matter how good your O-line is. If your quarterback doesn't trust what he sees and tries to take off, all bets are off. And the defense can basically take advantage of that.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where once we do see everything start to click, it's going to make everybody 1,000 times more confident. But so far, what we've seen, it's shaky ground we're standing on there.
I'm feeling pretty good that nothing's clicked and we're averaging 29.5 points a game. Like
that's a great sign. That is a great sign.
It is. That is true.
It's just the nature of the NFL. Like I know to some extent we may have gotten spoiled last year. I pick on young Eagles fans. To some extent they're spoiled anyway. Like they didn't have to go through the Buddy Ryan years and the Rich Kotite years and all those things. But this is the way football works. They got NFL players on the other side of the ball too. Take it to a collegiate level. I thought Colorado, just off of emotion, was going to run all over Colorado State, and that didn't happen. Like there are ebbs and flows in the game. NFL teams, even the bad ones, have NFL players, and you will experience times where you'll see Jalen out there and he's not getting much done. We like to praise guys like Russell Wilson prior to a few years ago, but you watch some of those old Seahawks teams with the Legion of Boom. It was long periods where they weren't getting anything done. Like we've seen Tom Brady struggle in games and put up 16 points, but it only seems to be a problem with his Philadelphia. Like you're not going to score on every drive.
To your
but
point
I want
with
to.
that,
Right. Obviously, right.
But to your point with that, I remember the ESPN segment. I forget what year it was. It was like, I think looking back, it was like 5-6 years before Brady even thought about retiring, and everyone's like, it's when the Patriots had that 4-game losing streak, and everyone said on ESPN, the Brady dynasty's over, and then the Patriots proceeded to rattle off like 12, winning 12 of their next like 14 games. It was like, it takes time sometimes. And we circle back to this. The fact that the Eagles are having their struggles and they're still 2-0 is probably one of the most important things about this team this year.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially and we can start moving into the defense here, especially with how banged up the defense was last week, to be able to walk away with it.
Kyle Brown said he didn't want to see Hurts running around a lot, but he also thinks there's a possibility of the Bucs spine Hurts all game.
They'd be crazy not to. I mean, you get a guy like that, it's almost, you're going to have to take 1 year 11, put it on him.
White roll. Levante David seems to be like that wild card guy that can do anything. I mean, he gets sacks, he intercepts passes, he bats passes down, he can cover. I don't think there's anything Levante David can't do on a football field, but maybe Devin White is a spy. But if you can confuse Jalen, keep him in the pocket, and make him get to that point where he doesn't trust what he sees, send some pressure, could be looking at a tight game here.
Yeah.
I fully expect the Eagles to win, but a very tight game.
Yeah, it's one of those things like I don't think it's just on Jalen to trust what he sees. I think that some of the times where he was pulling the ball on RPOs in week 2 is like I don't know what the read was there. Like I don't know what Brian Johnson's telling him to read in this play, but it was very weird. I think it's the best way to say that.
It's a bad play caller, really bad play caller.
Until it was good, and then it was great. But it turns out if you only have 4 plays that you just need to run over and over again, all right.
Run left, run right, run middle.
I know it's an NFL blitz playbook he's using. It's like, okay, it's easy.
Right.
But yeah, let's talk about. We talked about the offensive matchups. Let's talk about the defensive matchups. I guess we could. I mean, we could probably jump around, but starting at the in the trenches, that seems like that's probably the most dominant spot that maybe aside from a wide receiver cornerback matchups, this seems like this is probably the most dominant spot that the Eagles have over the Bucs.
This is probably the reason I'm so confident in the fact that the Eagles are going to win, because I feel like in terms of, looking at the Buccaneers and who they played so far, like all the PFF stats say the Buccaneers have been one of the most best offenses in terms of pass blocking, run blocking, running the ball. The Vikings defensive line, the Bears defensive line, compared to the Eagles defensive line, not even in the same stratosphere.
Yep. Don't hold their job
whatsoever. So this is the first test Tampa Bay's having. And Tampa Bay doesn't have a great offensive line, but it's not terrible either. It's right in that middle section. But regardless of that, even a middle section offensive line is going to have a lot of trouble. I think Jalen Carter is going to have a very, very, very good game. I think the edges are going to have a pretty good game. And I think the defensive line is going to be the way the Eagles keep this game either one close or allow it to be a double-digit win. I don't think it's necessarily going to be the offense taking advantage of the defense. I think it's going to be the Eagles' defense taking advantage of the Tampa Bay offense.
Tristan Wirfs is the only thing that I look at. The only person I can name off the top of my head off the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive line, and he's a good one. I mean, 2 consecutive Pro Bowls, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that. But Wirfs, I think, is good. Former first rounder from Iowa. He'll be lined up against Jai Sweat. Yep. And one of my bold predictions, I'm going to go ahead and spoil it. It comes out tomorrow. But one of my bold predictions, I believe Jai Sweat and Tristan Wirfs is a matchup to watch. I believe, as Jake has pointed out so many times, Jai Sweat is severely underrated when he might be one of the top 10. Well, not might be. He is one of the top 10 pass rushers in his league, especially coming off that right side. But this is the game we finally get to see Jai Sweat get some credit he deserves. He's in prime time. He doesn't have to do much. And if he's stifled on 75% of the plays, but he comes up with 2 sacks against a Pro Bowler, we're going to be talking about Jai Sweat a whole lot more than we've been talking about him before, and I think it's well deserved. I think he gets two sacks, and I think he gets some off works, and I think he looks good doing it.
Yeah, I pulled up the Tampa Bay offensive line. I'm very, very, very excited to see what the Eagles front seven does, especially the interior. So, tackles, I think they're going to the Tampa Bay. They're not. You obviously have Wirfs, and then you have Luke Godecki. You have a rookie right guard, and you have a free agent addition from the Chargers as your starting left guard. Cody Mauch, who is that starting right guard, is dealing with an injury. So that interior, as I mentioned, Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis might feast.
Yeah.
So that's the key for me, and that's going to be the reason in my eyes that, once again, I think the Eagles win. I think they're going to control that side of the battle in terms of the line of scrimmage, and they're gonna have to force Baker Mayfield to beat them. And look, if Baker Mayfield beats them, hats off to Baker. But I'd rather put that as if the Eagles lose because Baker Mayfield beats them, then Baker Mayfield had a good game. Once any given Sunday, in this case, any given Monday. But the Eagles should be able to dominate that line of scrimmage, and that's going to give them the best shot possible.
Yeah, has Baker been sacked yet? Or no, he hasn't thrown an interception. Maybe both.
I think he's been sacked. I don't know if he's thrown a pick.
Okay. I think he hasn't thrown a pick. Yeah, that's a very good way to say that. Yeah, make Baker Mayfield beat you. Like, don't just let him have it. Like, if Baker plays a great game, good for Baker. That's a very good way of saying that. As far as who's there, so pass catchers they have number 1, 2 combo, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Who's their number 3?
Trey Palmer is a very, very fun player. He's their
Baker
slot.
Mayfield's been sacked once for 4 yards. He hasn't thrown an interception yet.
Okay.
Yeah. What do you call it? Trey Palmer's their slot. He's a very, very fun receiver to watch.
Is he the kind of what are we talking size for him?
I think he's a smaller speed threat type receiver.
Okay, that's not necessarily because I mean that's one of the main things to watch here is what the Eagles are going to be doing with their slot. I believe when
Trey Palmer 6 feet 190.
Okay.
Yep.
I believe when James Bradbury came back this week, I think I saw somebody said that he was running slot a little bit, if I recall correctly.
I'm gonna go the other way with this. Now I think we did it for the benefit of entertainment and things of that nature. I do not want to see my all-pro outside corner. Like, I just get Rich in there, let him take his lumps, whatever he's gonna do and everything and stuff like that. But I think part of the James Bradbury's game is I know he can do it. I know he's done it before and everything, but he is much better as an outside corner than he is as a slot guy and everything. That threat of guys being able to go whichever direction they want to and things of that nature. He thrives on being physical and stuff. And it was just like, I think the more I think about it, I was like, maybe we can try it. But I think the more I'm thinking about it, Jake, I'm like, let him be who he is. Let him stick him where he's supposed to be. I think that's just me.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it's again going back to the Jeff Stoutland thing. You'd rather just switch one guy up rather than switch up your defense if one person goes out. So yeah, I mean, I do understand the merits of that. But on the other side, again, the depth at outside corner is much more than the depth at nickel.
Now I would say this, like to your point though, I have no problem seeing James Bradbury line up on these great tight ends we're gonna see. Put him on Travis Kelce. Do that. But I think I would probably rather see, just me personally, I don't know if you agree with this, Brandon. I would probably rather see James on the outside. I'd probably rather see Mario Goodrich take his lumps if he's going to take them, see what he does against Trey Palmer. If we're hopefully, like you guys are mentioning, we don't actually have to watch this because, the pass rush is getting home enough and creating enough pressure and things of that nature. This could be the game that the Eagles win the way that you want to win it. You want to win by collapsing the pocket, and you want to throw the football. That's what Harry Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie want. That's probably what we might get this time.
So I pulled up, because I wanted to see Bradbury's career snap alignment, and this through PFF. So in his career, he has played 6,258 snaps at outside corner. He has played 51 snaps at free safety, 522 in the box, and in the slot, he's only played 239 over a career that started in 2016 up to the present day. I don't know, just my personal preference. I'd rather have the guy that looks like an all-pro corner stay at outside corner.
I would assume the slot snaps are in Carolina with the Panthers.
The highest snaps he had in the slot, his years in Philly, which have been the past 2, he played a total of 12 snaps in the slot. So yeah, the majority of them were coming in Carolina and when he was with the Giants. So he's already an older corner, right? I would not like to just throw a guy that's so accustomed to playing a position in the fire against a guy that, Trey Palmer isn't a experienced receiver. He's a burner. He's a very, very fast slot receiver.
Mm.
That's not the type of test I'd like to, experiment with. I'd rather have my rookie slot corner that actually plays the position try to handle that instead of, messing with stuff. Because what if you put Bradbury in the slot and all of a sudden you start moving him in, out, and now when you're putting him back on the outside, he's not playing as well because he's not, thinking the same way about playing outside corner as slot corner. Like it's something you would see a lot in baseball when you start moving a guy around all different positions, from second base, the shortstop, the center field, left field. There's a reason sometimes why the guy's hitting falls off the map, because they're not comfortable with their position. They're not locked into a position. It's why you see that flip midseason sometimes when a guy gets comfortable at a position, all of a sudden his hitting numbers skyrocket. You can apply the same things to football in the sense of maybe it's not as positional in a sense, but slot corner and outside corner, we discussed it before. Two very different positions. You move a guy that's so comfortable at one to a different position and then back and forth, you might create some issues that you wouldn't need to have in the first place.
And not just comfortable, all pro, second team all pro. Should have been a Pro Bowler. Like, I'm gonna say this, and I want this documented and recorded because people thought I was crazy, and I would just want to reintroduce this in the conversation. Andrew Booth, first round draft choice of the Minnesota Vikings, is playing second string now for the Minnesota Vikings. Andrew Booth played at Clemson. I watched some Clemson football just to see what Andrew Booth doing, and the guy I was paying attention to was Mario Goodrich on the other side. I like Mario Goodrich. I think he can do this job. Maybe he wasn't ready last year. Same thing with Keely Ringo. Keely Ringo wasn't ready this year. It's a tough position to play. We understand that. And you're going against some of the best athletes in the world now, and you're doing it every single week. But I trust Mario Goodrich, even with a small sample size and just based off what I saw at college. It may not translate to the NFL level, but I feel better about having him out there than probably get mad at this if you want to, Zach McPherson.
The other thing that goes into that is now the Eagles have a specified nickel corner coach. So yeah. I think maybe you're flipping me a little bit. But I'm saying if I saw a drive with James Bradberry playing nickel, I'm not gonna be upset with it. I think I'll be fine with it.
And you could the final moments of like workouts that were available for like the I guess the media or whatever.
Yeah, during training camp.
James Bradberry was working out exclusively with that nickel coach. So I mean,
yeah, I mean, you guys might have flipped me a little bit.
I mean, a second thing you could do is also go with the 3 safety set. I'm not sure how that works with the size scheme, but
he did it last week.
Yeah, but maybe put a third safety out there and experiment with that and try to see what works best for that defense.
I believe those were the 2 or 3 plays that Sidney Brown was actually in. And TJ Hawkinson caught that pass, and then Sidney Brown, I mean, just bounced right off of him. Just a bad look. It's like, man, I've been hyping up Sidney Brown so much that he could just be an absolute jackhammer. And granted, TJ Hawkinson's a big dude, but like a deflector shield, man. I love what Brad has said. And it also scares me to some extent too, because it's like, as much as I love Brad's idea, there's also that part of me that just keeps telling me like, these safeties just can't cover. None of them. Okay, they can't
cover a little bit, but it's just a little bit.
They can't cover Justin Jefferson. Who can? And Jordan Addison's good, man. Like I don't want to take that. Again, like we said last week.
Well, now you got to deal with Godwin and Evans.
Okay, So I'm kind of out on Chris Godwin. It's completely personal because he tore his ACL a week after I tore mine, and I'm not 100% yet. And I try not to compare myself to professional athletes too much, but that's exactly what I'm doing here. So I still think there's a lingering ACL issue there that happened 2 years ago. I'm dumb. I know when I talk out loud, I can hear it too. And if you're thinking to yourself, wow, this Jake Beckman, what a dummy, then I wholeheartedly agree.
We have any fear about, do we have any fear at all about like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin? Like, do we feel like that's going to be an issue?
It'd be dumb not to fear Mike Evans. I mean, he's doing very well. Like he's mindset.
Do we trust? Let me rephrase. Do we trust Darius Slay and James Bradberry being able to hold up against him for 4 quarters?
Well, my whole thing is
because we keep wanting to reference because y'all Brad, we keep referencing that wild card game, but AJ Brown wasn't here for that. It was a different Jalen Hurts. There was no James Bradbury. There was no Jordan. It's a different team, even though we want to keep referencing that wild card game.
My whole thing is, do the Eagles have with their defensive scheme? Do they have their corners travel, or is it more Bradbury one side, Slay one side?
Slay was shadowing Jefferson.
Okay.
I was actually watching,
for the most part.
For whatever reason, I went back. I was watching the prime. What is it? The next gen prime broadcast where you kind of get the all 22 angle and stuff. It gets irritating for a while because they keep highlighting guys you already know who they are. But it was kind of interesting. And what Jake said is right. It was a little shadowing going on there, but we like this zone idea too. So
yeah, because what do you call it? I feel good about the Eagles corners. Now, look, it's the modern NFL. The receivers are going to win and the corners are going to win sometimes. It's not going to be, oh, this guy didn't have a single catch. And Mike Evans and Godwin are going to have some form of production. I just trust them to limit the amount of production that they have. I'd be more concerned, and this is looking at the Eagles defense and the strengths and weaknesses. I'm more concerned about the slot and the tight ends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I agree with it.
I think that's going to be a glaring problem all year.
Kate Otten, and even when in the Jonathan Gannon eras and stuff, like we saw those tight ends feast, and even just this Fangio scheme, as much as everybody loves it, has a tendency to make average quarterbacks look like Joe Montana from time to time. It's designed for your linebackers to get all the tackles, and tight ends, especially if they're good, are going to have some nice looks and things of that nature, especially when you have like Eagles who really just don't invest a lot and tons of resources in the safety position and the linebacker position. Tight ends are going to look good sometimes. And I think Gabe Otten has a good game. I don't really fear what's the running back's name? Rashad
White.
Leads the Buccaneers in rushing yards, but only averages 56 yards a game. I don't really feel like that's going to be much of an issue. But I do have some concerns about Evans, Godwin, Trey Palmer, and Kate Otten.
Yeah, we haven't really touched on the rushing game, and I feel like that's because we kind of feel safe with it. The Eagles have, what is it, the best or second best? Probably not best, but like one of the
other component. Like this is the first real mobile quarterback that they face all year.
The Eagles, according to I didn't mean to cut anyone off. According to PFF, the Eagles have the second best run defense grade in the NFL.
Yeah, and so yeah, when we're talking about a running game, and I understand that inevitably it'll come back to bite me in the ass, just like whenever the Saints, everybody's like, oh, Saints have the best running team, and then they play the Eagles, and then we run all over them. So I understand that at some point it'll come back to bite me, but this is not the time. Like they don't have the offensive line that I'm fearing to be able to get a running game going and sustain it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys have anything else on that? I mean, we got a injury report that's 12 people long, but it's also Friday and the game's on Monday, so there's not exactly a whole lot to take away from it. I know it looks like Ed Reed Blankenship is looking like he is going to be playing again. Yep, there you go. A lot of ribs, which begs the question: you guys beef rib or pork rib?
Emmons has an illness that he's had for a few days now. I don't know what kind of illness that is. Quez Watkins, not expecting to see him.
No.
A lot of limited participants, but the thing I was most encouraged by, James Bradbury, full participant. Kenneth Gainwell, full participant. So, yeah, I'm gonna be happy to see them back.
Again, it's Friday. Games in 4 days, 3 days, whatever the hell it is. I'm not taking a whole lot of credence in that.
I guess, the last thing I'll say about what I'm looking for now, how does the Eagles running back usage shape up? Because now this is the first game after DeAndre Swift's quote-unquote breakout game for the Eagles, right? Does it look like a 50-50, a 60-40, 70-30?
Is Rashad Penny's turn?
No.
It wouldn't surprise me, which is
I don't know.
thing.
They're going to deactivate DeAndre Swift now and give up Rashad Penny all the pitches.
I don't know. I think Rashad Penny's probably not active for this game. I think they go back to that.
He's he's really just not what they thought he was going to be.
No. And
the goal was to see if he had anything left, and doesn't look like there's much.
And you know what? I'm totally fine with that. Keep him deactivated until later in the season when cold weather and you want to bash people to death.
Yeah, do that. Keep him around. He'll probably start to get work around December towards the stretch run and in the playoffs.
Or
he's been fresh all year because you hadn't been using him, and now you just unleash him in the playoffs.
Or with the plague going around against running backs with all the injuries and everything, hold on to him, trade bait.
Give me that.
I think, having a rotation of Scott, Swift, and Gainwell, I think it's great for this matchup because all those guys can give you something in the pass game too, and that's going to be very important. Yeah,
and as far as what I want to see, I would like, I don't know, maybe 55%. What I want, obviously, is not what's going to happen. 55%. Swift, what does that give me? 45, maybe 25% Gainwell and 20% Boston. That's what I would want. I imagine that it's probably going to be closer to 33% for everybody.
You kind of in a position you kind of have to use Swift more, but I worry about him too because I'm like, just don't want to exhaust him like by week 8 and everything, and then we're wondering, could we have done something else?
That's one thing that they keep saying they're going to ride the hot hand, and I'm very curious to see if they count the hot hand as rolling over from week to week, or if it's the hot hand of that game. Or
Boston Scott averaged 8 yards a carry.
Boston Scott's good,
and
8 yards a carry on 5 carries, he had 40 yards. It's like I really don't know why we don't use this guy except for 2 times a year. He doesn't get hurt. He's the most durable running back we have on this offense. If you want to actually, expend some touches, kind of keep Jalen fresh and stuff. I've never seen Boston Scott get hurt. I think I saw him fumble once. You occasionally have a bad looking run, but he makes up for it in the passing game. He makes up for it as a blocker. He does shifty. Maybe not as a blocker.
He's so shifty.
Maybe not as a blocker.
In fantasy football land, this is what we would call a backfield nightmare.
Oh yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Or if you're dumb and stubborn like me, you play DeAndre Swift again, which is what I absolutely plan on doing. Because again, dumb. Let's get into predictions before we get out of here. Who wants to go first?
I mean, I'll start if you guys want me to.
Go for it.
How are we doing this? Are we just doing like score prediction or?
Yeah, if you want to do score prediction, I'll leave my dumb percentage thing.
Well, I mean, to do the percentage thing, I think I would take Eagles winning by a little bit, probably at. Well, let's see if my math is up to par here. Eagles winning by small margin, probably 50%.
Okay.
Buccaneers winning by a small margin, probably 30%. That leaves me with what? 20, and then 10, probably 10 for a blowout in each regard.
Okay.
And then final score prediction, I'll say Eagles win by a score of 23-17.
The spread, I believe, 4.5.
I think I haven't looked at the line for this game in terms of spread.
What about you, Jeff?
I'm gonna go. I think their season averages are pretty much what they are, but I think I'll subtract some from what we've seen from Tampa Bay over these first 2 games. I don't think they get into the 20s. I think they hover around 17. I think the Eagles, 29.5 as an average over the first game. I think it's probably what we'll see, but a better effort. So a better offensive effort and a less than stellar effort from the Buccaneers. I'm gonna go 30-17. I think it's 2 scores.
Okay. So I'm doing math real quick. So you did say the 29.5 being an average there, which is correct, but you have to remember that includes a pick six. So that actually makes it a 26-point average, which I think I'm going to go lower than that, but I'm thinking it's going to be I want to go 24-20. I think it's another one that's not comfortable.
I've heard a lot of 24-20s and 27-17s. So you're right around the same thing a lot of people saying.
Okay. And then as far as my percentage go, and again, for the uninitiated, this is the way. Well, no, I'm not going to spoil the reason why. I'm just going to brag about it later on. That I'm not incorrect. Eagles win by a little bit. I have that at 40% chance the Eagles win by a little bit. I have Buccaneers win by a little bit at a 30% chance of that happening. I have the Eagles winning by a lot at a 20%, and the Buccaneers winning by a lot at a 10%. So that's where I'm at. Sweet. You guys have anything else?
Yeah, I want to do one more thing.
Happy birthday to Harold Carmichael, one of the great Eagles of all time, one of my favorites. The old people in my family love Harold Carmichael, and so do I. Former HBCU graduate. I think he's in the SWAC Hall of Fame. I think he's in the Louisiana and in the Florida Sports Hall of Fame too. So great guy, great inspiration. Took him too long to get him in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, but he's in there. Who knew that Harold Carmichael and Hassan Reddick shared a birthday?
Oh, really?
So happy birthday to those guys.
So the last thing I want to do is, well, it goes along with predictions, but
yeah,
what is going to be the main storyline coming out of the Eagles-Buccaneers game that we carry into the next week? Who is the week?
Great job, Brandon. You need to do that every week. That might just be your thing. Like, biggest storyline. I'm gonna say it's the opposite of what we're seeing. No, I think the defense does well. I think the defense shines again. Defense has their best performance of the season on the road in prime time, which makes it look better. And I think we finally see the offense get some traction. I'm gonna say that AJ Brown and Devontae Smith both exceed 100 yards receiving.
Okay. I think I might actually flip on that. I think that the talks of Budda Baker to Philly are going to explode. I think that maybe the offense does play their best game, but I think safety is going to be the weak spot. I think somebody's probably going to get burned by somebody, and I think that the Budda Baker to the Eagles is going to pick up traction.
Cool.
So heading into the Week 4 game against Commanders, my storyline that I think is going to be big is this is going to be I wouldn't even say national, like, oh my God, look how good this player is. But Jalen Carter is going to be the talk of the town after this game. I think he has a dominant multi-sack performance. I still think, the Buccaneers are able to put some points up because they start double teaming him. But I think this is going to be the type of game where people look at Carter's performance and be like, man, if he didn't have those off the field issues, he would have been the 1-1 lock.
Yeah.
I don't know what Chicago's thinking right now. They're passing that dude twice.
Imagine what he would have did for their defensive line. And
they traded out at number 1. They could have took him there, and then they actually had a chance to get him again. And they decided twice that they didn't want this guy.
Turns out Chicago not very good in the first round.
Yeah,
who would have thought?
Right.
I can't wait for that Chicago Kansas City game where they bring up Mitch Trubisky and Patrick Mahomes. I don't know, upwards of 45 times. That'll be fun. Be a lot of fun.
I forget about that sometime. Yeah, that was ugly.
Don't. It's very funny. It's a very funny thing to fall asleep to. Anyway, anybody else have anything? We all good? Thank you guys very much for sticking around, for watching us. This has been Inside the Iggles Live. That is Brandon Pockrass. That is Jeffrey Knox. My name's Jake Beckman. Programming note, we will not be doing one on Monday. We'll be doing one on Tuesday, I think is what we decided. Is that correct? Cool. So, yeah, we're not going to do one right before the game. We'll do one post-game. We'll talk to you guys then. Go Birds.